Okay, solid. I'm going to be absolutely sweating out through the course of this game.
It is hot, isn't it? Are we rolling?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that's good. Trusting your visual judgment. You think that framing is good? No, that's poor.
I feel like I'm downhill to you, but I just want to be small.
Look, I reckon that's...
Maybe I'm just tiny.
I think I'm losing.
My head looks big though. Alright. Alright, carry on. Yeah, we're just on the Q&A, mate, so... Oh, it doesn't matter, you cut about your apartment, like, but just like, try and keep... Just don't talk to us, you know? Yeah. Alright, let's fucking do it. Come on. This will be sick. You should put all this in. I'll just keep this in, man. This is great.
I will. This is going to be the video.
This is class shit, man. Bang on. I'd watch this one. Do you want to put the Q&A off and just sit it?
Watch TV. Get our reaction.
We should. What's that program?
Andrew reacts.
It's a program, isn't it?
Yeah. Something box.
Gogglebox.
Yeah. I didn't want to say it because I don't like the word goggle. It's a
No, I hate that. Yeah.
Oh, like that sound.
Goggle. Sounds like a turkey.
Do you know what else I hate? Pip.
Gaggle. Yes, mate.
Pip and pop.
Yeah. Some words.
Saying that makes me want to punch myself in the face.
No, I think it must have been difficult as a teacher because like some words are like, mind you, was it high school? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not too bad.
Kids' names, that's the worst. Some of the kids' names are absolutely outrageous, but obviously can't.
Right, you're burning through memory cards, let's go.
Okay. Hello, welcome to another video, and I'm in Manchester, and more specifically, I'm in Joe's house.
I'm Joe, this is my house.
Thanks. So the video is going to be basically like just a house tour, essentially.
Yeah.
Isn't it? So the house tour is going to be focused around this sofa, and that picture, just a bit of clarity here, that picture is grossly uneven, unlevel. So if you're thinking the framing's wrong, it's not.
It's not
the
you.
friggin' picture's wonky.
You're not
actually,
wonky.
It looks quite straight there, which probably means the framing is wonky, but we'll deal with it. So Q&A, we're going to do a Q&A because it's easy to do, and it's informative, and any other reasons why I do
that, I think that's good enough, man. Easy is a great one.
Yeah, it's easy. So what I'm going to do, which is what I typically do with the Q&A, to prevent them being outrageously long, is set a timer. 15 minutes? Is that too long? Is that not long enough? You like a long Q&A.
My Q&A is going for like an hour sometimes.
Yeah, that's quite a long time.
Yeah, by the end of it I'm like sweating and I'm like...
Yeah, I'm already sweating now, to be fair.
Yeah, I'm talking about not hot days.
Tents have gone.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
we had squatters outside. Not, I know this will fit the channel, not like squatters. People who were staying in tents outside.
Yeah.
They've gone.
As I came here.
That's the news one.
In fact,
but they were
as I came in the door, they went, didn't they?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe you.
Okay, so the plan is I will answer some questions, Joe will answer some questions. These are the questions that are from my Instagram that I requested earlier. If you missed the event, the Instagram question seeking event, that means you're not following my Instagram, in which case go and do it now. Otherwise you miss out on events such as this. Question 1 from Hector_Cruz. Why do I look fat at 7 to 9% body fat? I weigh about 160 pounds and I'm 5'6".
I would question where you got that 7 to 9 number from.
I mean, that's a paradox. It really, like, if you look fat, you're probably not 7 to 9% body
Probably
fat.
are fat.
Yeah, that's generally the solution to that conundrum. If you look fat, you probably are fat. I mean, there are exceptions, like
what was the weight again?
160 pounds at 5'6".
That's quite heavy. If you at 5'6", if you were 7 to 9% body fat, 160 pounds, 5'6", you'd have a lot of muscle mass. Yeah. A lot of muscle mass.
I'm looking at his profile picture
if I was...
Oh, to be fair, he doesn't.
No, but not that kind of numbers. Because if I was 160 pounds... No, sorry, if I was 7 to 9% body fat, I'd be like that weight as well.
Yeah.
5'11".
So Hector, I'm looking at your profile picture now.
5'10". You're
not fat, but you're not 7 to 9% body fat. So I've solved the mystery there. You're not 7 to 9% body fat.
Yeah.
Jordan_Woodward22. How long does it take? That's a rubbish question. Jordan_22. Woodward 22.
_Woodward 22.
What's the best way to build muscle? That's my
number one question.
That's my video title right there.
$1 million question.
Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate that, mate. The best way to build muscle. That's a ridiculously broad question. Yeah, that is like a video in itself. So I'm happy to delve into that in more depth. But as part of the Q&A,
if you're going to summarise though, you have basic points, like fundamental points. If you were paying per letter, if you were sending telegrams, it was back in the 1930s, and you're like, yo, we gotta get this person big, and we got like 50 characters, you'd be like, caloric surplus, hypertrophy based training. You wouldn't want to put progressive overload in there just because of the characters, but progressive overload.
I think PO maybe. Just hope they get it.
And then beyond that, I'd put like sleep, vitamins.
What would you, if you were going to rank your top 3 in order, one being the most relevant, critical element of muscle growth?
The thing is,
it's hard because you can't have one without the other, can you?
Well, you can. The thing is, it depends where it is, right? Because if you're just in a caloric surplus and you're not doing any training, you're not gonna build muscle.
Yeah.
But if you follow a hypertrophy focus, even strength focus, any kind of resistance based program or training regime, and you just eat normally and don't really think about your calories or whatever, you'll still make some gains, some improvements.
Yeah.
So, the point is, you don't have to choose one. So we don't have to rank them, do we?
Yeah,
because no one goes, right, am I going to train today or am I going to eat?
It depends.
You know what I mean?
That depends, doesn't it? On the person
and
their circumstances.
Let's hope that both is an option.
Yeah. I think obviously training in an optimal sense for hypertrophy is key, right? So training in an adequate rep range for enough volume per week to make progress. So we're talking don't do sets of 40 reps, don't do heavy singles, because those two things aren't going to be optimal for hypertrophy. Somewhere within there would be okay.
Although the range within that is actually quite wide, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I would say, people say 8 to 12 is hypertrophy. It's probably more 5 to 15.
Yeah,
and actually even beyond that. But the only trouble with going beyond that in terms of higher rep ranges is if you're hitting failure on a set of 20 there or thereabouts, that feels horrendous.
Yeah.
That is actual torture.
It's not sustainable.
So it's just more efficient. You get more bang for your buck in terms of time wise if you aim for high RPEs on lower rep sets and stick to stuff like 8s and stuff like that. 5.
Yeah, if you're doing a set of 20 reps, the weight relatively will be low, and therefore that's not going to yield as good a results as if you were to do that set of 20, which is going to take however long and absolutely annihilate you with whatever weight you're going to lift. If you were to split that up into 2 sets of 10, the load's going to be heavier. I just don't think it's optimal. Maybe as a one-off or something to mix it up, but consistently that's not going to be a very efficient way to train, is it?
So we'll circle back to the main point of the number one tip to gain muscle is Google shit. Just Google everything, because you can find everything with a bit of patience and the ability to read. Now,
integral.
I was coming to that because there are studies on comparing different rep ranges, and it'll be sets of 4 versus sets of 10, and they'll find there's very little difference in terms of the actual hypertrophy that people experience from that. And so it comes down to what's practical for your situation, what do you enjoy, which is going to promote adherence and make you stick to it longer and be more enthusiastic about it. Being enthusiastic about your program is or about your training in general is a big factor in
we were saying earlier about strength training. Although some elements of strength training aren't going to be optimal for hypertrophy, if you find that more enjoyable, if you enjoy lifting heavy weights and that's going to make your training more fun, then you're probably going to adhere to that program for longer, and therefore ultimately that's going to yield better results. So that's an underrated, I think, element of training. If there's 2 types of training on offer and one of them is slightly more efficient but the other one's more enjoyable, the more enjoyable one's probably going to be a better long-term plan, because ultimately consistency is very important in hitting goals, right? If you're not going to train consistently, you're not going to hit your goals, or it's going to take longer to do that, It's funny, I was reading a thing earlier as well about exertion load as being a new variable to measure the effectiveness of training, right? So obviously generally volume is perceived to be, volume would be reps times sets times weight, so
that would be load.
But people would measure their training volume based on the total number of reps with a total number of weight. Obviously within reason, if you do 100 reps with a bar, that's worth nothing, right? But within reason, that's a way that you would measure volume, right? But what's also really, really key that is sometimes ignored is like the RPE or the intensity of your set. You know, like if you go to exhaustion on a set, it may not be sustainable, but that's worth more than if you were to stop at like an RPE 6. So the training, the resulting hypertrophy is not going to be as significant with a lower RPE set than a higher one. So therefore, what would look like on paper equal volume actually isn't if you're going closer to failure. The downside is obviously when you go to failure or close to failure, that's hard to recover from, and therefore you can't continue to do that.
There's a Goldilocks zone of RPEs where the majority of your sets should be in, basically.
Yeah.
You know, when a lot of time I'll give people an RPE based program and they'll ask me, and they'll kind of, people who haven't experienced that before, they'll, you know, be a bit confused about it, and I say basically when it comes down to it, it's in place to make sure that your sets are hard enough to be sufficient stimulus, but not so hard that you fatigue so fast and your returns are immediately diminished.
Yeah.
It's just about keeping, you know, but the more experience you have in the gym and training, you'll realise when to stop yourself, when to carry on, and how, you know, fast you'll fatigue if you take it too far in your first sets or exercises, etc.
And like RPE in itself is something that you need experience. Like you need to have been lifting for a while to be able to gauge your RPE, you know, because it's very common for someone to say, oh, that was an RPE 8, and you watch it and you think, you know what, that was nowhere near an 8, you know, like, so I think that comes with experience. You start to learn when you've got 1 or 2, especially things like squats, you'll learn when you've got 1 or 2 or 3 reps left in the tank, and that's really, really important, because again, if you're consistently hitting like RPE 10, that's not going to be sustainable. And even within the session itself, you know, if you do it, your first working set at an RPE 10, the quality of your next sets is going to be reduced, you know, because you've kind of gone a bit too far.
Also, there are, you know, a lot of different ways that you can implement progressive overload. You don't have to stick to anything RPE based, or you could even just use RPEs for your first few weeks to get you into some numbers that you feel comfortable with at those rep ranges, and then you can just look at your previous week's numbers and go off those. You know, obviously you then have to reset when you move to a phase with different exercises or different rep ranges or something like that. It's harder for you to equate, you know, the weight you're lifting across different rep ranges, but still, you know, or alternatively, again, you can do stuff like, a lot of people just keep it simple and will do a weight for 4 sets of 8, and then once you can do 4 sets of 8, knock it down to 4 sets of 5 and go heavier, and do that until you can do 4 sets of 8 and then repeat. You know, there are many ways, but the whole point is be accountable to some level of progress, you know, because that is the gains, and it is it. You can train as much as you want. When I used to like drink a lot more and shit on the weekends and stuff, I'd go out and, you know, I'd feel like not optimal on the Monday, and I'd be like, oh, maybe I'll just do high rep day, man. Maybe it's about time I did high rep day, because I can't be lifting the weight, man. And when I stopped doing that, not even carried on going out, but started being accountable to my weights and sticking to them, still I made, like, that was like my biggest burst of progress, apart from the noob gains when I first started lifting, but, you know.
Yeah, and that comes back to like tracking your, like, I think so many people I encounter train hard and like are conscious of their diet and other factors, but they don't really track their training. Like, they'll just go into the gym and have a loose idea of what they're doing, but it's just, or do the same thing all the time, you know. Like, if you're not tracking your training from day to day, so the numbers, the weights you're hitting and the number of reps and sets you're doing, like, it's almost impossible to make progress. You know, how can you, if you know what you've done last week, then how can you try and beat that? You know, you need to beat it in some way in order for progressive overload to be taking place, and without that, obviously progress is not going to happen. So it's really, really important that you do. It can be as simple as just writing it. Like, I just write it in the notes on my phone. You know, if you just have, at least if you write down what you've done, then at some point in the next couple of weeks you can aim to beat that, and therefore, progressive overload is taking place, and that's how you're going to make progress. Otherwise, you're not wasting your time. You can probably get lucky, and you have a feel for, like, you know, if something's like getting harder or something, whatever. But
gradually get stronger, probably, but not, you know,
not very efficient. And it's like, so it's very, if you train, you know, if you're in the gym for an hour and a half, there's a lot of things to remember. You're not going to frigging remember your numbers for everything, you know. So it's just a logical way to do it, and it just makes it much easier to ensure that you are progressing your training in some way. Like Joe said, there are multiple ways to do that, but it all stems from having something recorded, and therefore you can beat that thing that's recorded.
Accountability. I think also like what you said about training hard. You know, people perceive something that is difficult or painful to them as hard. Yeah. But I can go in and do a drop set, you know, on the chest press machine and smash out what is ultimately like a 40 rep set or something, and that'll be hard for me, you know. But just because it's most painful, most uncomfortable at the time, doesn't mean that that's going to equate to more. You know, it will equate to some form of adaptation. You'll get better at doing drop sets on the chest press. Do you know what I mean? But the whole like no pain, no gain adage, that doesn't mean, you know, that's a very oversimplified way of saying you have to struggle to make some kind of progress. But it doesn't mean more pain, more gain. That's not how it works, right?
Yeah.
You know, because there's an element of like people train hard because they get all fucking like psyched up about it. You watch motivational videos, you go in the gym, you bounce around the gym, having like way shorter rest periods than you should have. You might get a sick pump, you might feel good, you're full of fucking endorphins. Well, do you want that? Some people will just prefer that, that's fine, if that's what you want, but it's probably not the optimal path for actually making gains. No. Yeah. So choose one, because that's a fine choice as well. If you just want to enjoy your workouts as much as you can, whatever, then, you know. Anyway, we did a lot on that question.
That was pretty.
Is that up or what?
That was a lot of time.
Sorry if we rambled. I feel like we rambled. But...
Okay, 0-0 track, 0-0. How often are you sore? Is it necessary in a bulking phase to get sore all the time? Thanks. Like whether you're, you know, whatever phase of training you're in, I'd say the answer would be pretty consistent. Like soreness is not, you know, it shouldn't be ignored, but it's not a barometer of like an effective training session. Like soreness doesn't mean your training was effective. Like I think some people, particularly at the start, they'll if they train a body part and it's not sore the next day, they panic and think, oh, I haven't trained effectively because I'm not sore. Like soreness, it's just.
I think it's just you. A lot of the time, it happens just more when you have like quite a drastic change in routine. So if you start a new exercise, you know, even if I've been doing flat barbell bench for you know, since I was 15, and then I start dumbbell pressing, it's still just a flat press, but there's minor differences in the movement path and stuff, and then I probably will ache after that.
That is the timer. I feel like
let's carry on. I think
we're going to carry on. I'm just going to ignore the timer.
Same thing goes for like muscle groups that aren't, you know, as used to the frequency. So let's say I'm going from a high rep phase into a lower rep phase. It's likely that I'm gonna ache more, we'll get more DOMs for that week, maybe 2 weeks. It will subside, and eventually you'll get to the point, if you're on a quite high frequency split, like a push-pull legs twice a week or whatever, you get to the point where you actually very rarely ache, like off anything. Like I could go in and pretty much blast, like it depends on the muscle group and stuff, because some are more prone to aching generally, like stuff like I think hamstrings ache a lot if you do a lot of hamstring curls.
I think it's also like I think like if the movement you're doing requires a pretty significant like eccentric contraction. So for example, if you did like you know, like skull crushes but going beyond your head with the easy bar, right? Because your tricep is having to contract like to support the weight. That's an eccentric. So the muscle's lengthening as it's contracting. Things like that are going to elicit more soreness.
I think that is actually. I'm pretty sure I've seen that in some kind of study. Yeah. That those. Yeah.
Because that's a pretty. That will elicit more soreness because it's a pretty extreme like. So the combination of that, for example, if you were to do skull crushers going beyond your head after not having done them for a few weeks, that'll be a recipe for some extreme tricep soreness. Doesn't mean you're going to get massive triceps, it just means that you've done something that your body needs to adapt to, and it's also that kind of contraction.
Exactly. So you know, you will ache until you become accustomed to it pretty much. But it's not, like you said, it's not an indicator of progress. You don't need to be like worried if you're not aching. It literally means pretty much nothing.
Okay, AB33_ JDM, how big of an impact is it when you shorten your breaks between sets from, let's say, 1 minute to 30 seconds?
I would say a very big impact.
Yeah.
I mean,
30 seconds, that's outrageous.
Yeah, as I've trained longer, I've started increasing my rest periods a little more. Also, obviously, it does have a big impact on, like you were saying, your total load. You know, I mean, if you're gonna do 4 sets of 8, and you're gonna have 30 seconds between them, there is no way that your weight isn't going to be decreasing.
Your full set
each set.
Going to be the worst set anyone's ever seen.
Yeah, literally.
If someone walks into the gym during that full set, that's going to be embarrassing for you.
Well, it's not far off a drop set. That's what it's going to be like. Pretty much.
Yeah, you're going to be lifted. Yeah, exactly.
You know,
30 seconds. That's like that. Same thing as like, you know, drop sets and supersets, that kind of stuff. Like that style of training has a place, and like it can be useful, like if you're pushed for time or you're traveling or whatever. But as a general rule, like if you're reducing your recovery to the point where you can't perform multiple sets with, you know, like similar weight, then that's not going to be optimal, like in any sense really, apart from a time sense. So
because
like,
what you're going to end up with is, instead of like a true RPE, you're going to end up with like a kind of situational RPE. Like this is your RPE 8 after you've done 3 sets with 30 seconds rest in between them. It's not which is would actually be fully rested, like your RPE 6 or something like 5, you know. And so you're kind of doing yourself an injustice there, certainly in terms of if you have strength or hypertrophy goals, you are selling yourself short by taking those shorter rest periods. Again, it's going to be something that gives you the illusion of training hard and the like feeling of having a sick workout, but it's not going to translate into results.
Yeah, especially like from a strength standpoint, like strength is about quality. So like the quality of your sets there is going to diminish. Like it's going to be drop off so quickly after your first set. Beyond that, it's just going to be basically a waste of time. So like, I mean, technically, if you were doing that consistently, keeping that recovery consistent, although it wouldn't be optimal, you would make progress on that.
At that, right?
But it would be in the same way that if you were to train like naked in rollerblades, if you did it all the time, you would make progress. I mean, I'd question the logic there. Although you did.
I did.
A period of time.
7 PB, rollerblade, RDLs,
very impressive actually.
But if you think about that kind of thing, like from just a human standpoint in terms of adapting to the demands of your everyday life, and you know, let's say I have, you know, there's something that actually requires me to move this certain weight in this direction this many times a week. Now, if I have to do that, my body will adapt to doing it. No matter whether I have to push this heavy door, you know, even if it's once a day, right? So I'm having pretty much a 24-hour rest period, but the act of moving this weight on a regular basis is still going to amount to, you know, me adapting to be able to do it. And so I wouldn't just not be scared at all of having too long rest periods. You're not suffering. It's not like if you, like I say, if it's strength or hypertrophy, you don't ever need to think, oh, this is too long. Only when, like, if you want to keep your workouts short, again, like convenience, lifestyle, you know, stuff like that. But there's no point, there's no reason for you to be concerned about them going over. I would just be concerned about them going under. You know, to the point where you actually just not, your total load is so heavily impacted that you're not seeing the benefit.
And like form as well, like obviously that kind of fatigue, the form's going to be not at optimal, and that's obviously going to not allow you to, you know, recruit and engage like muscles correctly. But on that front as well, like again, even if you were using that kind of suboptimal recovery, like it's really, really important that you are measuring your recovery. I was saying that earlier, like I think people, again, people forget, or just that doesn't occur to them to like time your recovery between the sets. Like if you don't time your recovery between sets, that's a massive training variable that you're ignoring, because when you're fatigued, particularly, it's really hard to gauge time. Like if you experiment, right, do like a couple of heavy sets of bench press, right, and get someone to time it, and then you say how long you think it's been, you'll probably be pretty far out. It's very hard to gauge recovery when you're tired. So I think if you time it, or at least have a loose idea of that, that allows you to make sure you're kind of not having too long or not too short a time, but also set that as a variable. So if you're because what can happen is from 1 week to the next, you might feel weaker and you don't understand why, and that could just be because you were in a rush and so you were having less recovery. Again, knocking a minute off your recovery between 4 sets will have a drastic impact on the amount of weight and the amount of reps you can do with that exercise. So it's important to bear that in mind. Yeah,
that also works the other way, and you can kind of trick yourself into thinking that you're progressing when actually you're just taking longer rest periods.
Exactly. So it's just something, like I said, when you're in that state, then it's very easy, or if you're on your phone on Facebook, right, it's very easy for 5 minutes to slip by without you realising. That 5 minutes compared to 2 minutes last week is going to elicit like a much better set, which is going to make you think you're stronger. You're not stronger, you've just had more recovery. You've wasted your life looking at Facebook. Okay, JMO_49. What is the best way to come out of a caloric deficit? Is it better to maintain for a few weeks before bulking?
I think physically.
That's it. There's two sides to that. Physiologically and then psychologically.
So physiologically, it doesn't really matter. You don't really need to spend like weeks like reverse dieting and increase your calories by 50 every 4 days. Like what's that, a baby bell, man?
She's true.
But obviously the psychological thing, I mean, it's still physical. You have cravings and a tendency to overeat. I suppose that is physical. But that would, if that's not handled, that will translate into damaging your actual progress. And so I would always say there's no need to take too long about it and be too anal about it. But I'd usually come up, the thing is, when you're coming out of a deficit, to some extent you need to retest your maintenance. Right, so I'd jump straight up by a good few hundred calories. If you're in like your typical 500 plus cal deficit, you're safe jumping up by a few hundred calories. Now obviously your scale might go up if those calories come from, as they probably should, primarily carbs. Your scales might jump up on an acute level, like for over a day or two, but then level out again, just because you're now storing like some more water. You generally have more food in your digestive system. You know what I mean? Everything like glycogen, whatever. Once that's leveled out, then you can then I'd go up in smaller increments and just kind of get a sense for what your maintenance is. Now, you don't have to spend weeks and weeks figuring out your exact maintenance, because you can just cut out that step, and let's say you're going into a gaining phase, you just want to figure out what number of calories is going to give you an appropriate rate of weight gain. So like, do I really need to know my maintenance? If I am gaining weight and hopefully seeing some strength improvements or performance improvements in general, but I'm gaining weight at what I would consider, an adequate rate, not beyond what is naturally possible, and not so conservative that I'm not fucking doing anything, then that number of calories that allows me to do that is the right number for now. And I don't need to peel it back and be like, oh, well, what does that mean my maintenance is? You don't even have a real maintenance. You just have you have your average, don't you? But there's no real, you kind of just making it more complicated by trying to rework out your maintenance and stuff like that. So I would just what was the actual question?
That was such a long stint that my camera turned off. The question was, coming out of a calorie deficit, do you need, is it better to maintain? No, it's not, is that? It's a waste of time. Unnecessary. It's not better, is it?
Be conservative with it, that's the point. You don't need to you don't need a maintenance phase. But I would just be conservative with it. Like, you can come up in a little jump, but then after that, just gradually increase. Give your calories time to set in. Don't try and react too fast where you're like, oh shit, I'm not gaining weight, let's put more calories in. You need to be in quite a consistent routine before you can accurately judge your calories and where they are in relation to your maintenance.
Yeah, but going either way, like whether you're going into or coming out of a cut or a bulk, like you're always going to want to do it gradually and incrementally. Like it's not going to be optimal in the long term to make a massive jump either way, because all you're going to do there is you're just going to hit a wall. You know, like the further you jump ahead, like if you were to cut your calories drastically, increase your calories drastically immediately, you'd gain more weight, but a lot of that weight's not going to be muscle, and B, further down the line, because you're already on a very high number of calories, you're going to find it very hard to then jump up again. So same as anything, isn't it? It's about making progress on the least amount. So like if you're trying to gain weight, you want to be gaining weight, like Joe said, within that optimal range, but on the least amount of calories possible.
Yeah. So we're going to come back to what we were saying about basically measuring whatever you can measure.
Yeah.
Now whether you can be bothered to measure. So if you can only be asked tracking your 3 main lifts and your body weight, do that.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got scales and you can also do your body fat and you want to record some more weights, do that. It's not that complicated. We're probably making it sound more complicated than it is.
Yeah.
But if you just keep track of as many different things as you can, and then try and eventually you'll get a feel for the relationship between those, the relationship between your body weight and your strength and stuff, and you know how one might move but the other might not, and you know, just don't shit yourself generally, man. Just a lot of the time. See, in saying this, you kind of run the risk of encouraging people to overthink things and read too much into the data, which is hard, man. I think a lot of it can't really be taught, and you have to just go through it. You have to experience the years of lifting, you know, and get to a point where you're not really overthinking things. You know, you can trust the process, but only because you've researched the process and you've seen it work in other instances and on yourself previously.
Ideally on
research the process and then trust the process. You know what I mean?
Don't
just trust any process, because there are a lot of shit processes.
Yeah. Like if you're getting stronger, if your performance in the gym, which you're tracking ideally, is improving, and you're gaining or losing weight at a decent rate, then that's just carry on doing that, because the chances are if you're cutting, then you're going to be maintaining your muscle mass because your performance is going well, and if you're bulking, the chances are you're going to be putting on muscle mass because again you're getting stronger. That's a very good barometer of the amount of muscle mass.
Yeah, particularly if you making those strength improvements in a hypertrophy rep range, because it's definitely possible to probably lose muscle mass but get significantly better at your 1 rep maxes. I would probably do that now if I started on a powerlifting program. So you know, if hypertrophy is your goal, then you obviously be in hypertrophy rep ranges. It's not really it's not really profound, but you know what I mean.
Okay, sick. That was long. I've lost track of time. I reckon that's been.
You did like 4 questions. I went on
very long Q&A. Holy. So right, we're going to wind up a bit. What I will do is I'll put the link to Joe's YouTube in the description. So if you watched the video and you thought, you know what, actually quite like Joe. He's not Matt, but like he's a reasonable guy. Then feel free to go and check him out.
I'm not reasonable.
Say what you're beyond.
This was tame.
Post reasonable.
Alright, thanks for having me though. Seriously, it was a nice chat. Let's talk about fitness shit for a change, because I just talk about stupid shit all the time.
Okay, I need to go and cool down. I need to go and regulate my body temperature. Yeah. See ya.
This is the worst ever.